Top 10 tips for awesome macro shots with the iPhone 13 Pro. I've got the iPhone 13 Pro Max 1TB edition here, and something I love about it is its improved photo and video capabilities. And perhaps one of the coolest ones I'm going to show you today is macro mode, which basically turns your iPhone into a magnifying glass. My first tip is that you can shoot macro shots using all three of the iPhone's lenses. So I've got my video mic here and I'm using the wide angle lens on the iPhone, getting in really close and snap, then moving it into normal 1x zoom, snap, and finally telephoto 3x zoom, and now I have an extremely zoomed in macro shot. So when shooting cool macro shots, you can choose between those three fields of view depending on how much of the background you want to incorporate. Now to use macro mode, you literally don't have to change anything. Just hold the camera up to the object you want to shoot and it will automatically switch modes. Wow, I've got a hairy arm. Can see every pore, every hair, every last thing you didn't want to see. And this brings me to tip 2 is whenever you're shooting macro, I would suggest going in as close as you can and then pulling back. Sometimes you think you've got the winning shot, but then you realize the camera can go just a little bit closer. And when you're in this close, 1 centimeter can make the world of difference. My third tip is making sure you have enough light. If you're shooting outdoors, you're going to get a much better result with macro mode because your subject is lit up that extra bit more. Macro shots taken indoors will inevitably get a lot more noise in them than if the same shot was taken outside. So try to shoot outside if you can, but if you can't, another way to let more light into your shot is making sure your phone isn't casting shadows. When you're getting in this close, your phone can easily get in the way. So changing your phone angle even slightly can help let more light onto your subject. Tip 4 is that textures look awesome. Here's a leaf up close. Here's one of my canvas prints behind me. Here's the crocodile logo from my Lacoste t-shirt. And for context, this is a tiny little logo. And here in this macro shot, I can see every last stitch of it. I feel like I wasn't meant to see those things, but still. Cool. Tip 5 is about choosing the best settings. Here's my first edition shadowless Charizard. And without needing to change any settings, this 12 megapixel macro photo looks good. Shooting macro in video mode, however, requires a bit more tinkering with the frame rates. I'm a 4K guy, so I like to shoot everything I can in 4K 30 or 4K 60. And here I was able to shoot 4K 30 fine, but when trying to use 4K 60, I simply couldn't get focus. The only way to fix this was to switch to the wide angle lens, which put things in focus again. Same thing applies for using macro in slow motion. Again, I found the wide angle lens was the only lens that worked up close. This shot is okay, but I think I'll be sticking to 4K 30. And of course it shoots regular HD at 24, 30 and 60. So which video resolution you use is up to you, but I would suggest shooting 30 frames a second if you want to make the most of all three lenses of the iPhone 13 Pro. Tip 6 is when shooting cool macro video shots like this one here, to start recording when you're already in macro mode. This means moving your phone really close to the subject, making sure the iPhone switches into macro mode and then pressing record. Once you've hit record, it should stay in macro mode so you can move backwards and forwards and it will maintain focus at all distances. Whereas if you started wide in normal video mode and tried to transition into macro mode in the middle of your video, firstly it will struggle and put your shot out of focus. Then if you tap the screen to put it in focus, then it's going to be a bumpy transition. Tip 7 is that you actually can use macro video mode handheld. When shooting something up close, this normally brings out earthquake-like shakes no matter how steady your hand is. Whereas I found so far with using the iPhone 13 Pro that even if I am shaking it a little bit, it stabilizes instantly and extremely well. If you're a perfectionist like me, however, or you're trying to produce a more professional output, you'll want to consider using the iPhone in combination with a camera slider. Here I'm using a Rhino slider with a smartphone mount. I'll link it below, but basically this is the same technique I was using before, except I'm pressing record, then activating the slider through my iPad, so the entire movement is done without having to touch and potentially bump the camera. Tip 9 is that the iPhone can switch in and out of macro mode when it can't see clearly, which makes pulling off shots like the eye shot here a little bit trickier. So the way I ended up overcoming this problem was by moving my phone out so it could see my eye again and then back in because it doesn't always realize you're trying to shoot a macro shot, especially when there's little information and little light. In fact, using a video light like the one I've got here will definitely help with these kinds of shots. The final thing to keep in mind with the iPhone 13 Pro is that everything looks dirty up close. You look dirty, your possessions look dirty, even something you just cleaned, it looks dirty. And that's because you're going in so close that inevitably you're going to see every last speck of dust and dirt. So my keyboard here, this looks okay, right? Not that dirty. But when I go in close, ooh, look at that, gross. Basically everything you shoot is dirtier than you think. Even tree leaves have dirt and dust on them. And this is a whole new world you'll discover when you start shooting more macro. And this is another reason not to shoot your own body with it, because you're probably not going to like what you see. I'll link the iPhone I've got here, the Pro Max 1TB, underneath this video. Hope these tips were helpful. Subscribe for more. Happy macroing, and I will see you next time. Peace out.